Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my studio. We're here today for a fundraising campaign to raise money to send Howard to the Nomadic Academy of Fools. So to start with, can you please tell us what is the Nomadic Academy of Fools?
Yeah, so the Nomadic Academy of Fools is a series of a year-long workshop run by Master Fool, Jonathan Kay. And what happens is every couple of months there's a 2-week training session somewhere in a different city in Europe. So it travels around, hence the Nomadic. Academy, because it's training one to be a fool, and Fools because it's fools.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background in comedy and fool and trickster and slapstick, which started with Commedia dell'Arte?
Yeah, so I started out in working in a theatre form called Commedia dell'Arte, which is originally an Italian theatre form, now obviously worldwide, well known as a theatre form, using masks. Its root is back in Renaissance Italy, and it's very much around dealing with fools. It's masked foolery in a sense, masked slapstick. It led to clowning and early silent movies and music hall, and then the kind of vaudeville acts. So, and you can see it even now. Its influences in the Marx Brothers, Simpsons. It's just its influence goes on, and it's foolery basically.
And for almost 20 years, you ran with your friend Jeff Beal a commedia troupe called Off a Boom, which traveled all over Europe, stopping and performing in streets and village squares, in strange locations like bowling alleys, sometimes in 4 different languages at once. So in a sense, you were really a Shakespearean traveling player.
Yeah, yeah, that was kind of like the modern equivalent. We would just load up a van with a stage and with costumes, very simple costumes, no major set, just a stage with a backdrop, and we would head off and perform. When we first set up, we bussed a lot, so we would just set up and perform sort of without bookings, and then obviously as we became more successful, we'd start getting bookings, and we played at Venice Carnival and various carnivals in Europe, and various outdoor places in England. And we also played in theatres, but when we started off, we started off touring.
And since you don't want to boast, I can say that you were the only English company invited to play at Venice Carnival, which is seen by many as one of the birthplaces of Commedia, 5 times.
Yes, that's true.
So when I met you, you were still doing Commedia with Off a Boom, but you were getting really interested in dark clown and sacred clown, and clowning in terms of ritual, particularly in different traditions around the world. Because I was going back and forth to America then, you asked me if it might be possible to come over to Arizona, where I was running an arts retreat, to look at sacred clown and masking traditions among Native American tribes. Yeah. And you got an Arts Council England grant to come over. And tell us a little bit about that experience and how it changed your ideas.
Okay, so yeah, as part of Commedia, when I first started it, I was sort of more into the comedy and the slapstick of it. And then as you work deeper in the form, you start to realise that it has, it's a social theatre, so it's about life, it's about all those things in life. And you realise that there are, in a sense, darker undertones. This comedy needs to have some dark undertones to it, in the same way tragedy works best with some lightness. So coupled with working with masks, I started to get into the concepts of mask states, so trance states, and I'd started reading about the Hopi masks and the Hopi Katsina dolls. So yes, when I met you, one of the first things we talked about a lot was going up to Hopi land to have a look at these ceremonies. And on those, actually 3 years, there were 3 years that I came over to Endicott, 3 years in a row. We went to a lot of ceremonies and looked at clowning in ceremonies and masking in ceremonies, and it did change my concepts of what the roots of theatre were like. When you learn theatre, you always sort of cover the roots of theatre very quickly. It's like, oh yes, it started out in kind of ceremony and shamanism. Let's quickly move on to the Greeks, and let's quickly move on, to Elizabethan age. Passing by the mystery cycles in the medieval Europe, and to look at sort of traditions that are more or less unbroken, really gave me a kind of insight into the ideas of clowning and mask that might have been there in the roots of theatre. So it changed quite a lot my approach to theatre. I'd already started getting interested in that darker aspect of it, but I think that brought a sacredness into.
Well, we went to look at the Pagola clowns with the Yaqui Easter dances. We saw Heyoka clowns with Lakota Sundance. And I remember you saying, I want to discover, we would have had this in Europe, I want to discover those roots.
Yeah, very much so. I think I want to discover that kind of masking route. I remember the Pagola particularly in the plaza in Tucson, 3 o'clock in the morning, a line of clowns, not performing to anyone because there wasn't anyone there at that time. All the sort of public performances are gone, and they were still being clowns. They were definitely clowning around, but with a purpose. So there was something quite kind of interesting about that.
Quite an important purpose, because they were holding the balance of darkness and light in the world, goodness and evil, literally in their hands.
Yeah, and yet they were doing it as clowns. So there was something about clowns that have that sort of power, I suppose.
And of course, on that first trip to Tucson to look at clowning, we were just acquaintances at that point.
That's right.
And that's kind of the trip where we fell in love and eventually got married. So there's all sorts of reasons why that we thank Arts Council England for their grant.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came back to England, and as I remember it, you were really interested in following this route of dark clowning, European roots of sacred clowning, but life didn't go that way, and you ended up focusing on directing and teaching and other things.
Yeah.
But now you're coming back full circle to finally exploring that thread that you had talked about then with Jonathan Kay and the Fools.
Yeah. Yeah, so one of the great things about this opportunity that I've been given, which is, so there's a group of 8 European fools that will be in my year, that will go on these different stations and go through all these trainings together. One of the things that I'm interested about in it is it brings me back to performance, because I've been mainly directing and teaching. I think as a physical theatre performer, at the end of 20 years with Offerboom, I was tired. There's a question of like, where did you go as a physical theatre performer? Yeah. So I went into mainly directing and teaching, and I haven't done as much performance as perhaps I would have liked to. So this is going to actually bring back a very definite kind of performance style to me, as well as I'm also, it's going to really influence my directing and teaching. It already has started to influence the work that I do in my new theatre company, Columbina Theatre, which I set up with the playwright Peter Oswald, who he likes to write in verse, and he deals with his verse is imbued with this archetypal world, which is one of the aspects of Fool that I'm very interested in, is this whole sort of sacredness of the Fool.
Can you talk just a little bit about Jonathan's ideas about archetypal fooling and the I was fascinated by the thing you explained to me about sacred, scarred, and scared.
Yeah. So in theatre we have this concept of the fourth wall, which is a very modern introduction to theatre. Theatre never used to have that. The commedia deals with speaking directly to the audience, and then that's one side of it, which Jonathan calls the play. That's one aspect of it. And then on the stage there is a play where you're performing a play, and that's where the fourth wall comes from. That there's an idea that the audience doesn't exist there. Now Jonathan has another aspect which he calls the kind of archetypal world, which is the sacred, secret, scared and scarred. So it's this very deep place of being, I think, that has a very sacred aspect to it, as well as a psychologically kind of deep aspect that connects human beings in our kind of secrets and our, those places that are quite dark that we keep secret to ourselves. And he uses this concept to flow between all those 3 states. So the
sacred,
direct,
secret, scared, scarred.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I can see applications of that to writing.
Yes, I think there would be, definitely.
You're also looking at fooling in terms of trickster and the ways that we bring energy into our lives. And this has made me a little nervous, because we've noticed, since I'm a writer and folklorist working with archetypal and mythic symbolism as well. We've noticed that when we focus on a particular archetype or a particular story, suddenly our lives take on aspects of those energies. So what do you think might happen to us if, as you go through a year of training in a trickster archetype like Fool, will we have world creation or world destruction?
Oh, I think that's a
that's $1 million question.
Well, that's $1 million question. That's might be slightly jinxing things, wouldn't it? Yeah. Hopefully, lots of laughter and good oddness. I hope.
Okay, so we're really hoping that you will help us send Howard to this Nomadic Academy of Fools. We're a family of artists, and our income is limited, so we're seeking help from our friends in our community to get him over there doing this both entertaining but also very deep and sacred work. So thank you for being part of our fundraising campaign. Thank you for coming into our studio and listening to us today. And we just want to end by saying that we've got our own little trickster here. Come on, Tilly, come say hello. Who inspires us daily. So thank you, Tilly, and thank you.
Thank you.